Helen Martinez stood in the massive chamber and felt very small. The walls stretched up so high she could not see the ceiling. 12 different alien beings sat on thrones that floated in the air around her. Each one looked at her like she was some kind of bug they found crawling on their floor. The biggest alien was made of what looked like living crystal. Its voice sounded like breaking glass when it spoke. I am Speaker Zex Thara of the Galactic Council. You represent the species called humans from the third planet of the Sol system. Helen nodded. She had been Earth's ambassador for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. 3 months ago, humanity had made first contact with an alien probe. They thought it was the beginning of a wonderful new age. They were wrong. Your species has been evaluated, the crystal being continued. You have basic space travel and primitive weapons. Your technology is acceptable for a newly contacted race. Therefore, you will now contribute to galactic civilization. Another alien spoke up. This one looked like a giant slug covered in purple slime. The tribute demand is standard procedure. 1 million of your finest specimens will be selected for service to Council member worlds. Helen's heart sank. She had feared this was coming. What kind of service? Manual labor, technical work, entertainment, whatever each world requires, said a third alien that resembled a walking tree with too many eyes. The service period is 50 of your Earth years. This is generous. Many species serve for centuries. And if we refuse? Helen asked about the crystal being's laugh sounded like a window breaking. Refusal is not an option. You have 30 of your days to provide the tribute. If you do not comply, we will take what we need by force. Your orbital defenses will be destroyed, and your cities will be harvested for workers. Helen felt sick. Earth's military had spent months analyzing the alien technology from the first contact. The results were terrifying. The aliens were so far ahead that humanity's best weapons would be like throwing rocks at a battleship. We need scientists, engineers, artists, and soldiers, continued the slug creature. Your best and brightest individuals. They will be distributed among our 12 member worlds according to our needs. This is slavery, Helen said. This is civilization, replied the tree alien. Every species contributes to the greater good of the galaxy. Your people will receive food, shelter, and basic medical care. Many will find the work fulfilling. The crystal being leaned forward on its floating throne. You seem distressed, human. Ambassador, this reaction is common among primitive species. You think in terms of individual freedom rather than collective prosperity. In time, your people will understand the honor of serving advanced civilizations. Helen wanted to scream at them, but she forced herself to stay calm. I need to consult with my government. Of course. We are not unreasonable. You have 30 days to make your selection and deliver the tribute to the designated coordinates. Transport ships will be provided for the journey to our worlds. The slug alien made a wet gurgling sound. It might have been laughter. We suggest you choose wisely. We have methods of evaluating the quality of tribute. If you attempt to send us your inferior specimens, we will know. The consequences would be most unpleasant for your entire species. Helen felt her hands shake. How will you know if someone is inferior? We have detailed scans of your population from our initial survey, the tree alien explained. We know your genetic markers, skill levels, and psychological profiles. Each tribute will be matched against these records. Deception will result in the immediate harvest of 10 million additional specimens. The crystal being stood up from its throne, and its massive form cast a shadow over Helen. Do not mistake our patience for weakness, human. We have uplifted or destroyed over 3,000 species in the past million years. Your cooperation will determine which category humanity joins. I understand, Helen whispered. Excellent. Your transport ship is waiting. Use your journey home to consider the great opportunity we are offering your species. Service to the Council has elevated many primitive races to heights they never could have achieved alone. Helen walked out of the chamber on unsteady legs. The alien station around her buzzed with activity as dozens of different species went about their business. She saw other humans working as servants and laborers. They wore simple gray uniforms and moved with the defeated posture of the conquered. On the ship back to Earth, she tried to call President Jake Collins, but the communication delay was too long for real conversation. Instead, she recorded a message, explaining everything that had happened. Her voice cracked as she described the demands and the consequences of refusal. The journey took 3 weeks. When she finally reached Earth, she was taken directly to the emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council. The room was full of worried faces. President Collins looked like he had not slept in days. "We've been running simulations since we got your message," he said. "General Lisa Parker and Admiral Ryan Brooks have been working with our best military minds. The results are not encouraging." General Parker stood up. She was a small woman, but her voice filled the room. "We cannot win a conventional war against the Galactic Council. Their technology is too advanced. Our best estimate is that resistance would result in the total destruction of human civilization within hours." Admiral Brooks nodded grimly. "Our entire space fleet would be eliminated before we could fire a single shot. They have weapons that can destroy planets from across star systems." "So we just give them 1 million of our best people?" asked Secretary of State Carol White. "Scientists, engineers, artists, soldiers, the people who make our civilization strong. If we give them our best people, we might survive as a species," said Defense Secretary Gary Moore. "But we would be crippled. It would take generations to recover from losing so many talented individuals." The room fell silent. Helen looked around at the faces of Earth's leaders. They all looked defeated before the battle had even begun. Then Dr. Kevin Shaw raised his hand. He was head of the Department of Corrections and rarely spoke at these meetings. "What if we don't give them our best people?" "They said they would know if we tried to deceive them," Helen replied. Kevin smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "I'm not talking about deception. I'm talking about giving them exactly what they asked for. 1 million of our finest specimens. But we get to define what makes someone fine." President Collins leaned forward. "Explain." "They want people who can work hard, follow orders, survive in harsh conditions, and adapt to new situations. They want individuals who are resourceful, tough, and not afraid of violence when necessary." Kevin's smile grew wider. "I know exactly where to find 1 million people like that." The room was completely quiet now. Everyone was staring at Kevin. "Our prisons are full of people who have all those qualities. Bank robbers, hackers, con artists, soldiers gone bad, demolition experts, cult leaders, terrorists. People who society has given up on, but who have skills that could be very useful in the right circumstances." General Parker's eyes widened. "You want to send them our criminals?" "I want to send them our most dangerous, most resourceful, most adaptable people. People who have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. People who know how to survive in hostile environments and think outside the rules." The silence stretched on for a long moment. Then President Collins began to smile. Captain Amy Rodriguez walked through the gates of Blackwater Federal Penitentiary and felt like she was entering another world. The massive concrete walls stretched up toward gray clouds. Guard towers watched every corner of the complex. This was where society kept its most dangerous people locked away from the rest of humanity. Amy had been handpicked by President Collins for this mission. She was a military psychologist with 15 years of experience dealing with Special Forces soldiers. If anyone could evaluate criminals for their potential as galactic operatives, she could do it. Behind her walked Dr. Marcus Hill and Colonel Ben Foster. Marcus was an expert on criminal psychology. Ben was former special operations who now worked in military intelligence. Together, they would select the most dangerous and capable criminals on Earth for humanity's desperate gamble. Warden met them at the entrance. His name was Robert Klein, and he looked tired. "I've been running this place for 20 years, he said as they walked down a long corridor. "I've never seen anything like what you're asking for." "We need people with specific skills," Amy replied. "Not just violent criminals, but individuals who can think fast, adapt to new situations, and work as part of a team when necessary." "You're looking for criminals who can be soldiers," Klein said. "We're looking for soldiers who became criminals," Ben corrected. "There's a difference." They stopped outside a reinforced door marked D Block. This was maximum security. The worst of the worst were kept here. Men and women who would never see freedom again under normal circumstances. "First one is Danny Sullivan," Klein said as he opened the door. "Former Navy SEAL. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Distinguished service record. Until he came home and robbed 6 banks in 2 months. Danny was sitting on his bunk reading a book. He looked up when they entered his cell. He was tall and lean with scars on his hands and arms. His eyes were sharp and alert despite 5 years in prison. Military visitors, Danny said. This should be interesting. Amy sat down across from him. We have a job offer. Danny laughed. I'm serving life without parole. What kind of job could you possibly have for me? The kind that might get you out of here, Amy replied. For the first time, Danny looked serious. I'm listening. Amy explained the situation with the Galactic Council and the tribute demand. She told him about the plan to send criminals instead of scientists and soldiers. Danny listened without interrupting. So let me understand this, Danny said when she finished. You want me to pretend to be a slave for 50 years on an alien planet. In exchange, you'll wipe my record clean if I survive. That's correct. Danny was quiet for a long moment. What makes you think I won't just run away once I get to space? Because you're not a coward, Amy said. You robbed banks because you were angry and lost, not because you were evil. This gives you a chance to serve your country again, Danny smiled. You've done your homework on me. We have. Are you interested? Hell yes. The next cell contained Maria Santos. She was small and thin with dark hair and intense eyes. Her file said she was a cyber terrorist who had brought down 3 major corporations before being caught. Maria Santos, Ben said as they sat down, graduated from MIT at age 19. PhD in computer science. Then you decided to wage war against corporate America. Maria looked at them suspiciously. They killed my parents in a chemical spill and covered it up. I was evening the score. We understand, Amy said. We're not here to judge you. We're here to offer you a chance at revenge against beings who think humans are insects. Maria's eyes lit up when they explained the mission. The possibility of accessing alien technology and computer systems made her lean forward eagerly. Their systems would be completely different from anything on Earth, she said. The challenge would be incredible. The risk would also be incredible. Marcus warned. If you're caught hacking their systems, they might kill you. Maria shrugged. They might kill me anyway. At least this way I'd die doing something worthwhile. The third recruit was Alex Turner. He had been the leader of a religious cult in Montana. His followers had believed he could speak to God directly. The cult had ended when Alex convinced 40 people to rob a federal armored car convoy. Now, he was serving multiple life sentences. Alex Turner, Amy said as they entered his cell. You convinced 40 people to risk their lives for you. That's a rare talent. Alex was a handsome man in his 40s with silver hair and bright blue eyes. Even in prison clothes, he had a presence that filled the room. People want to believe in something greater than themselves, Alex said. I gave them purpose. We might have a new purpose for you, Ben said. When they explained the mission, Alex was fascinated. You want me to organize criminals into an effective fighting force. You want me to give them something to believe in? Exactly, Amy replied. Alex smiled. I've been waiting 5 years for an opportunity like this. When do we start? The final recruit of the day was Nina Cross. Her file made Amy's stomach turn. Nina had been a demolitions expert for a construction company until a corporate cover-up killed her husband and 2 children in a building collapse. She had spent the next 3 years hunting down everyone responsible and blowing up their offices, homes, and businesses. Nina was sitting at a small table drawing technical diagrams when they entered. She looked up with cold green eyes. More visitors, she said. How exciting. Nina Cross, Marcus said carefully. You killed 18 people in your revenge campaign. 18 people who deserved to die, Nina replied without emotion. Amy studied her for a moment. We're offering you a chance to use your skills for something bigger than personal revenge. Nothing is bigger than personal revenge, Nina said. What? About species revenge? Ben asked. That got Nina's attention. When they explained about the Galactic Council and their demands, Nina's expression changed. For the first time since they entered her cell, she looked interested. They think they can just take our people? She asked. They've done it to thousands of other species, Amy replied. Nina was quiet for several minutes. She went back to her technical drawings and made some notes. Finally, she looked up. I'll need access to detailed information about their infrastructure and defensive systems. We can provide that, Ben said. And I'll need to know exactly what kind of materials will be available on their worlds. We're working on that too. Nina nodded slowly. Then I'm in. But I want one thing understood. If we're doing this, we're going to do it right. No half measures. When the time comes, we bring their whole system down. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. Understood. As they left the prison that evening, Amy looked back at the massive walls. Inside those walls were some of the most dangerous people on Earth. In 3 weeks, they would be humanity's secret weapon among the stars. Think this will work? Ben asked. Amy considered the question. I think we're about to find out if criminals can save the world. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly in all directions around the secret facility that did not exist on any official map. Danny Sullivan stepped off the transport helicopter and felt the hot, dry air hit his face. After 5 years in a concrete cell, this felt like freedom, even though he knew it was just another kind of prison. Behind him came Maria Santos, Alex Turner, Nina Cross, and 50 other criminals who had agreed to humanity's desperate plan. They were the first group to arrive at what the guards called Training Facility Zero. More would come every day until they had 1,000 of Earth's most dangerous people ready to serve as galactic slaves. Colonel Pete Harrison waited for them at the entrance to the main building. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes who looked like he had seen too much combat. Danny recognized the type immediately. This was a soldier who had fought in places that were never mentioned in the news. Welcome to your new home, Pete said as they gathered around him. For the next 3 weeks, you will learn everything you need to know about alien society, technology, and psychology. You will also learn to work together as a team, despite your natural inclinations toward chaos and violence. A hand went up in the back of the group. It belonged to Rick Mason, a career criminal who had spent most of his adult life in various prisons. What if we don't want to work as a team? Pete smiled. It was not a friendly expression. And you, go back to your cells and serve out your sentences while someone else takes your place. We have plenty of volunteers. Rick lowered his hand and said nothing more. They were divided into groups of 10 and assigned to barracks buildings. Danny found himself sharing a room with Maria, Alex, Nina, and 6 other criminals with various specialties. There was Sam Wheeler, who had been a master forger, Janet Price, who had run the largest drug smuggling operation on the West Coast, Carlos Rivera, who had been a hitman for organized crime, Lisa Gray, who had been a computer hacker like Maria, but specialized in identity theft, Bobby Chun, who had been an expert car thief and mechanic, and Tom Brown, who had been a professional burglar. Their first instructor was Dr. Sarah Kim, an expert on alien psychology and culture. She stood in front of a large screen that showed images of the 12 species that made up the Galactic Council. These beings have ruled the galaxy for over 1 million years, she explained. They are used to complete obedience from conquered species. They expect you to be grateful for the opportunity to serve them. The screen showed the crystal beings called the Zeta Ki. These are the leaders of the Council. They communicate through harmonic vibrations and consider themselves the most evolved species in the galaxy. They value order and efficiency above all else. Next came the slug-like Moradi. These beings are hedonists who live only for pleasure and comfort. They are lazy but cunning. They use other species to do all their work while they enjoy lives of luxury. The tree-like Verdani were shown next. These are the intellectuals of the Council. They value knowledge and see themselves as the guardians of galactic wisdom. They often underestimate other species because they think intelligence can only take one form. Dr. Kim continued through all 12 species, explaining their strengths, weaknesses, and cultural habits. Danny paid close attention to everything she said. Understanding your enemy was the first rule of combat. After the cultural briefing, they moved to technology training. The instructor was Professor John Martinez, a physicist who had been studying the alien probe that made first contact with Earth. Their technology is based on quantum manipulation rather than traditional electronics, he explained. This makes it incredibly powerful, but also creates certain vulnerabilities that we might be able to exploit. Maria leaned forward in her seat. What kind of vulnerabilities? Professor Martinez smiled. Quantum systems are very sensitive to interference. The right kind of signal at the right frequency can cause cascade failures throughout their networks. How? Do we generate those signals? Maria asked. We're working on that. For now, just focus on learning how their basic systems operate. The afternoon was spent in physical training. Despite being criminals, most of the volunteers were in poor physical condition after years in prison. Colonel Pete pushed them hard. Through exercises designed to build strength and endurance, Danny found himself naturally taking charge of his group during the training exercises. His military background made him the obvious leader, and the others seemed to accept his authority. Without question. You're good at this, Alex said as they rested between exercises. The others respect you. Military training, Danny replied. It never really goes away. Good, Alex said. We're going to need strong leadership where we're going. Nina was sitting nearby cleaning her fingernails with a small knife. Leadership won't matter if we can't get access to their important systems. We need to think about how to get close to the people who really run things. That's where I come in, Alex said. People want to trust me. It's my gift. I can make our alien masters think I'm the most loyal servant they've ever had. Maria looked up from the tablet she was studying. And while you're gaining their trust, I'll be learning their computer systems from the inside. Give me enough time, and I can get into anything. Carlos Rivera spoke up. He had been quiet most of the day. What about security? These aliens aren't stupid. They must have ways to detect threats. They've been in charge for 1 million years, Danny said. That makes them confident. Overconfident. They think they know everything about how conquered species behave. But we're not a typical conquered species, Nina added. We're criminals. We know how to lie, steal, sabotage, and kill. We know how to survive in hostile environments. The training continued for 3 weeks. They learned alien languages, customs, and technology. They practiced looking defeated and grateful while secretly planning resistance. They learned to work together despite their criminal backgrounds and natural distrust of authority. Danny was impressed by how quickly the group adapted. These were people who had survived by their wits in the worst parts of human society. Learning to survive among aliens was just another challenge to overcome. On the final day, Colonel Peep gathered all 1,000 volunteers in the main auditorium. The room was packed with dangerous men and women who had volunteered to risk everything for a chance at freedom and revenge. Tomorrow you board transport ships that will take you to the Galactic Council, Pete announced. You will be disguised as primitive cargo vessels carrying Earth's tribute. Once you arrive, you will be distributed among the 12 member worlds according to their needs. The room was completely silent. Everyone understood that they might never see Earth again. Your mission is simple, Pete continued. Learn everything you can about alien society and technology. Integrate into their systems. Wait for the signal to strike. When that signal comes, you will have one chance to bring down an empire that has ruled the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. Danny looked around at the faces of his fellow criminals. They looked determined and ready. After 3 weeks of training, they had become something more than just a collection of violent offenders. They had become humanity's secret weapon. President Jake Collins appeared on the main screen via secure transmission. I know what we're asking of you seems impossible, but you're not just criminals anymore. You're Earth's last hope. Make us proud. The screen went dark, and the room remained silent for a long moment. Then someone started clapping. Soon the entire auditorium was filled with applause. 1,000 of society's outcasts were ready to save the world. 2 years had passed since the transport ships carried 1,000 human criminals to 12 different worlds across the galaxy. Danny Sullivan wiped sweat from his forehead as he finished inspecting the mining equipment on Keth Prime. The work was hard, but he had done worse things in his life. The Kethians were a proud warrior, race who valued strength and discipline above all else. They stood 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and 4 arms that ended in clawed hands. To them, Danny was just another human slave who worked in their deep mines pulling precious metals from the planet's core. What they did not know was that Danny had been promoted to shift supervisor because of his military background and natural leadership skills. The Kethians respected his ability to organize the other human workers and keep production levels high. This gave him access to areas of the mining complex that regular slaves never saw. Danny walked through the main control room, where Kethian engineers monitored the mining operations. The walls were covered with displays showing production numbers, equipment status, and security reports. He had memorized every detail over the past 2 years. Human Danny called out Supervisor Grexter, the Kethian in charge of the mining. Complex. Production in Sector 7 is down again. Fix this problem. Yes, sir, Danny replied with the perfect tone of respectful obedience. I will inspect the equipment immediately. Danny had learned to play his role perfectly. He appeared, grateful for the opportunity to serve and eager to please his alien masters. The Kethians saw him as proof that humans could be valuable workers when properly motivated. But late at night, in the slave quarters, Danny met secretly with other humans who had been distributed to Keth Prime. There were 47 of them total, all criminals from Earth, who are now playing the part of loyal servants. Janet Price had been assigned to food preparation in the main Kethian city. Her background running drug smuggling operations made her excellent at moving things without being noticed. She brought news from the capital and supplies that the mining crews needed. The Kethians are planning to expand their military fleet, she whispered to the group gathered in an abandoned storage room. I overheard discussions about new ship construction. Sam Wheeler had been working in the document processing center, where he used his forgery skills to create false records and identification papers. I've been copying their military specifications whenever possible. Their ship designs have some interesting weaknesses. Bobby Chun worked in the vehicle maintenance bay, where his knowledge of mechanics made him valuable to his Kethian supervisors. Their ground vehicles use a centralized power distribution system. If you know where to place a small explosive charge, you can disable their entire motor pool. Danny smiled as he listened to his people report their findings. The Kethians thought they had received grateful slaves, but they had actually accepted a highly trained intelligence-gathering operation into the heart of their military infrastructure. Meanwhile, on the administrative world of Nexus, Maria Santos sat at her workstation in the central data processing facility. Her job was to organize and catalog information that came in from across the galaxy. The work was boring, but it gave her access to the Council's most sensitive data networks. Maria had convinced her supervisors that humans had a natural talent for organizing information quickly and accurately. She worked faster than any of the other slave species, which made her valuable to the alien administrators who only cared about efficiency. What they did not realize was that Maria was slowly copying everything she accessed. Her background as a cyber terrorist had taught her how to move data without leaving traces. Every night she uploaded stolen information to hidden communication devices that looked like simple human entertainment systems. The data she was gathering painted a picture of a galactic empire that was much more fragile than it appeared. 12 member species of the Council were constantly arguing about territory and resources. Many of the conquered worlds were barely controlled and could rebel if given the right encouragement. On the pleasure world of Hedonesia, Alex Turner had become the personal advisor to Council member Vexnari. The alien was part of a species that lived only for sensual experiences and exotic pleasures. Alex's ability to understand psychological motivations made him incredibly valuable to his hedonistic master. Vexnari was a blob-like creature that changed colors based on its emotional state. It spent most of its time consuming rare foods, experiencing virtual reality fantasies, and indulging in various forms of entertainment that would have been illegal on most civilized worlds. "My dear human Alex," Vexnari said as it shifted from purple to bright orange, "I need your advice about the upcoming council vote on resource allocation." Alex had learned that Vexnari was deeply corrupt and involved in several illegal schemes to steal resources from other council members. The alien trusted Alex completely because Alex always gave advice that helped Vexnari profit from various situations. "I believe Council Member Tethron is planning to vote against your proposal," Alex said carefully. Perhaps some pressure could be applied to change his mind. What Vexnari did not know was that Alex was carefully documenting every illegal activity and corrupt deal that his master was involved in. The information would be incredibly damaging to the Council if it ever became public. On the fortress world of Citadel, Nenia Cross worked in the maintenance department of the primary military installation. Her job was to repair and service the equipment that kept the massive fortress functioning. The work gave her access to every important system in the facility. Nenia had convinced her supervisors that her background in construction made her excellent at understanding complex mechanical systems. She worked quietly and efficiently, never causing problems or asking questions that might make the alien suspicious. But Nenia was doing much more than just maintenance work. She was carefully mapping every defensive system, power conduit, and structural weakness in the fortress. Her knowledge of explosives told her exactly where to place charges to cause maximum damage when the time came. The fortress was designed to withstand massive military attacks from space fleets and armies of ground troops. But it was not designed to resist sabotage from within by someone who understood its systems completely. Late at night, Nenia would slip through maintenance tunnels and air ducts to plant small devices in key locations. The devices looked like standard repair equipment, but they were actually sophisticated bombs that could be triggered remotely. Communication between the criminals on different worlds was maintained through quantum communication arrays that Maria had helped design during their training. The aliens thought the devices were primitive human entertainment systems, but they were actually allowing the scattered criminals to coordinate their activities across the galaxy. The most surprising development was how many of the criminals had formed genuine friendships with some of the aliens they worked alongside. Not all members of the conquered species were evil or oppressive. Many were just ordinary beings trying to survive in a system they had not created. This made the mission more complicated because the criminals found themselves caring about some of the aliens who would be hurt when their rebellion began. But they also understood that the Galactic Council system was built on oppression and exploitation that needed to be stopped. Danny received a coded message through his hidden communicator that made his blood run cold. Earth's intelligence services had intercepted Galactic Council communications, indicating that a second tribute demand was being prepared. This time, the Council wanted 10 million humans for an expansion of their slave labor programs. The time for patient intelligence gathering was coming to an end. Soon Danny and his fellow criminals would need to put their years of preparation to the test. The signal from Earth could come at any moment, and when it did, they would have one chance to strike back against an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. Danny looked up at the alien stars visible through his small window and wondered if humanity's outcasts were really capable of bringing down such a vast and powerful enemy. In a few days, he would find out. The quantum pulse arrived simultaneously across all 12 Council worlds at exactly midnight Galactic Standard Time. Danny Sullivan felt the small device implanted behind his ear vibrate 3 times in the pattern they had memorized during training. After 3 years of patient waiting, the signal had finally come. Danny was working the night shift in the Keth Prime mining complex when the pulse activated. Around him, 46 other human criminals received the same signal. The rebellion that would shake the galaxy was about to begin. Danny walked calmly to the main control room where 2 Kethian guards were monitoring the mining operations. They looked up when he entered and nodded respectfully. Over 3 years, Danny had earned their complete trust. "Is there a problem with Sector 7 again?" asked Guard Captain Morix. "I'm afraid so," Danny replied. Then he moved faster than the aliens could react. His military training took over as he struck both guards with precise blows that knocked them unconscious. Within seconds, he had access to the main control systems. Danny began typing commands into the alien computer interface. He had memorized the shutdown procedures months ago. All across the mining complex, emergency alarms began to sound as the power systems started failing in carefully planned sequence. At the same time, Janet Price was moving through the Kethian capital city with a small team of humans. Their job was to disable the planetary communication grid. Janet had spent 3 years learning the layout of every important building in the city. The communication center was guarded by 12 Kethian soldiers, but they were not expecting an attack from within. Janet's team had been working in the building for months as maintenance workers and cleaning staff. They knew exactly where the guards would be and how to avoid them. Bobby Chun planted explosive charges on the main transmitter array, while Sam Wheeler used his forgery skills to create false security reports that would delay any response. Within 20 minutes, the entire planet was cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the deep mines, Nina Cross's carefully placed explosive devices began detonating in perfect sequence. She had spent 3 years mapping every structural weakness in the mining complex. The explosions were precisely calculated to cause maximum damage to the facility while minimizing harm to the human workers. The Kethians ran in panic. as their most important industrial center collapsed around them. But the real shock came when they tried to access their military arsenals and found that every weapons depot had been sabotaged by humans they had trusted completely. On the administrative world of Nexus, Maria Santos was unleashing the largest cyber attack in galactic history. From her position at the heart of the Council's information network, she released computer viruses that had been carefully designed to exploit the quantum-based alien technology. The viruses spread through the galactic communication network faster than the aliens could react. Financial records were corrupted, military communications were jammed, and embarrassing personal information about council members was broadcast across thousands of worlds. Maria smiled as she watched her computer. Screens fill with error messages and system failures. The aliens had thought their quantum technology made them invulnerable to primitive human hacking attempts. They were learning how wrong they had been. The most devastating attack came from the pleasure world of Hedonesia, where Alex Turner had spent 3 years documenting the corruption and illegal activities of council member Vexnari. When the signal came, Alex activated a broadcasting system that sent detailed evidence of council corruption to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The broadcasts revealed how council members had been stealing resources, manipulating trade agreements, and exploiting conquered species for personal profit. The information destroyed the council's reputation as benevolent rulers and exposed them as the corrupt dictators they really were. But Alex's greatest achievement was psychological. His broadcasts included personal messages to the leaders of conquered species explaining that humans had infiltrated the council and were striking back. The message was simple but powerful. If primitive humans could resist, then anyone could resist. On Citadel, Nenia Cross triggered the explosive devices she had been planting for 3 years. The Fortress World's planetary defense grid did not just shut down, it turned on itself. Defense platforms began firing on each other in automated confusion as their control systems failed. The explosions were perfectly timed to create a cascade failure throughout the entire defensive network. Within hours, the most heavily defended world in the galaxy was completely helpless. But the real masterstroke was what happened next. The criminals had spent 3 years building relationships with conquered species throughout the galaxy. When their rebellion began, these allies rose up simultaneously across hundreds of worlds. The Kethians found their slave populations refusing to work. The Morati discovered that their pleasure servants had been poisoning their food for months. The Vedani learned that their trusted research assistants had been sabotaging important experiments. Most importantly, the conquered species saw that resistance was possible. The Galactic Council's greatest weapon had always been the belief that they were too powerful to fight. Once that belief was shattered, their empire began to crumble. Danny stood in the ruins of the Sia Keth Prime mining complex and watched Kethian soldiers surrender to groups of human and alien rebels. The proud warrior race had been completely defeated by the slaves they had dismissed as harmless. "Not bad for a bunch of criminals," said Janet Price as she joined Danny on the observation platform. "We're not criminals anymore," Danny replied. "We're liberators." Communication was restored between the scattered human teams as Maria's cyber attack opened secure channels across the galaxy. The reports came in from all 12 council worlds. Complete success on every front. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, but only 3 of the 12 member species showed up. The others were too busy dealing with rebellions on their home worlds, or had already been overthrown by their own populations. 6 months later, Ambassador Helen Martinez returned to Kepler Prime, but this time she was not alone. Representatives from dozens of species that had thrown off council rule accompanied her to the station that had once been the center of galactic oppression. The council chambers were nearly empty. Speaker Zexthara sat alone on his floating throne, looking much smaller than he had 3 years ago. The crystal being's voice cracked when he spoke. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Nothing," Helen replied. "Your empire is finished. A species you oppressed are free to govern themselves." "This is chaos," Zextara said. "Without the Council, there will be war and destruction throughout the galaxy." "Maybe," Helen said. "But that's better than slavery and oppression." The new Galactic Assembly was established with representatives from every species that wanted to participate. Instead of tribute and forced labor, the new system was based on cooperation and mutual benefit. Danny Sullivan stood on the observation deck of the space station and looked out at the stars. 3 years ago, he had been a criminal serving life in prison. Now he was a hero who had helped liberate an entire galaxy. Behind him came Maria Santos, Alex Turner, Nina Cross, and hundreds of other former criminals who had earned their freedom through the most unlikely military victory in human history. Their records had been expunged, and they were free to build new lives among the stars. "So what do we do now?" Maria asked. Danny smiled. "Whatever we want." For the first time in our lives were truly free. The former criminals scattered across the galaxy to pursue new opportunities. Some became traders and explorers. Others used their skills to help build the new galactic government. A few even returned to Earth to share their experiences with humanity. The species that had once been slaves worked together to build a better galaxy based on freedom and cooperation instead of fear and oppression. It would not be perfect, but it would be just and somewhere in the records of galactic history, a strange story was recorded about how humanity's outcasts became the key to liberation for billions of beings across thousands of worlds. The criminals had found redemption not through punishment, but through purpose, proving that even society's most dangerous people could become heroes when given the chance to fight for something greater than themselves.